Continuing on our series on milestones in the faith of Moses, and we reached Hebrews chapter 11, verse 26. I'll read from verse 24 just to get the context. By faith, Moses, when he was become of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. And here's our verse, Hebrews 11, verse 26. Esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. Here we see Hebrews 11, verse 26, esteeming the reproach of Christ. This word, esteeming, means considering, and helps us to understand Moses' rationale. The word means to think beforehand. Moses saw ahead, looked further than the fork in the road, and allowed his imagination to run on ahead. He came to the fork and realized, if I continue to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, the Pharaoh elect, if I continue to amass this fortune and win these awards and gain the acclaim of this people, I will find myself in a place where I cannot turn back without damage to the nation or mine own soul. And the original text in Hebrews chapter 11 can suggest that Moses looked away from everything else and fixed his full attention on one thing, the reward God offers to people of faith. Hebrews chapter 11 verse 6 says, he that comes to God must believe that he is, and the rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And so we see that this is what enabled Moses to esteem the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt. And we know that Egypt has great treasure cities. In fact, we read this, don't we, in chapter 1. We read about the treasure cities that they were to build. Verse 11, so they appointed taskmasters over them to afflict them with hard labor, and they built for Pharaoh storage cities, Pithom and Ramses, and so on. And we know from history that that was the actual case. But here Moses considers the reproach of Christ, which refers to the earthly disgrace that Christ received when he was here and treated. You see, like Christ, Moses chose to suffer the indignities associated with God's people, instead of embracing the worldly pleasures of Pharaoh's court. And of course, the reward is the motivation for enduring in this life. Then, later on in Hebrews, this is taken up and applied to the Hebrew Christians. Hebrews 12, verse 3. Well, consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. You see, the point of the Hebrew writer using this message from Exodus chapter 2 is to point forward to the fact that being a Christian means there is a reproach. And again, this is picked up in Hebrews 13, isn't it? And verse 14, therefore let us go forth to him, that is to Christ, outside the camp, bearing his reproach. And then it goes on, for here we have no continuing city, but we seek the one to come. And so we can see the connection between Moses in Exodus chapter 2, the reproach of Christ, specifically in verse 26, and the reproach that the Hebrews faced. For example, in chapter 10, Hebrews 10, you had compassion on me, and your changed and joyfully accepted this plundering of your goods, knowing that you have a better and enduring possession for yourselves in heaven. Therefore, do not cast away your confidence, which has great reward. So we see the connection here between the message of Hebrews 11:26, the reproach of Christ and the greater treasures, and also the message of the believers who lived at the time when the book of Hebrews was written, and the connection here with Exodus chapter 2, esteeming the approach of Christ greater riches than the treasure in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. Verse 11 of Exodus 2, now it came about in those days when Moses had grown up, he went out to his brethren and looked on their hard labours, and he saw an Egyptian being the Hebrew one of his brethren, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater treasures or greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, because he looked to the reward. Thank you for listening.